It's almost as if it's intentional.
The world's largest meat supplier has been disrupted, according to reports, by Russian hackers.
Putin is literally licking his chops, and a lot of other adversaries around the world are doing the same thing because they're seeing a weak leader.
Florida sheriff issuing a wake-up call after a violent standoff with a heavily armed 14-year-old girl.
Where have we gone wrong that 12-year-old and 14-year-old think it's okay to take on law enforcement?
The Biden administration is suspending oil and gas leases in the Arctic National Wildlife. That reverses a drilling program approved by the Trump administration.
Senator John Kennedy's new campaign ad does not disappoint.
I will not let you down. I'd rather drink weed killer.
You should just stay out of it, right? Exactly. But I'm happy to be here, and the news has not stopped, especially when it comes to the border issues. Just when you think that you could take your, think that things are getting somewhat under control, you see video like what we just saw, what we see now coming from the border. Not only the numbers staggering, the president doesn't go, he doesn't ignore it. The vice president, it says, don't blame me for it. It's the Secretary of State who's got to go to the Triangle countries and say, what's going on here? Why are all your people leaving? Then you see video like this emerge.
This video is heartbreaking. I have a 5-year-old. It is a 5-year-old little boy right there. We're going to play it for you. But he's carrying his teddy bear, and he's left at the border by a man and a woman. They're walking away, and he is screaming, please don't leave me. Come back. Listen.
They're left by the border of Juarez and El Paso. This happened on Thursday. This video has now emerged. They see it's a barbed wire section of the wall, and he wants the trafficker, the human trafficker, not to leave him alone. I mean, that's how bad things get for a 5-year-old. What parent can do that regardless of conditions is beyond me. But who could ever watch that video and say there's not a huge problem at our border?
It's a big problem, and Washington is incentivizing this chaos that's happening at the border.
Why is that, Lawrence? Because they say if you're a kid, you get to stay if you come.
It's a magnet problem. Look, and we've been forced not to have this conversation because they tell us we don't understand the climate that's there. There's a lot of American families that are going through a lot. You know what would happen if they decided to just send their kid out? The parents would be in jail, and the kids would be in CPS.
That's a good point.
Rightfully so. And what this country is doing right now under the Biden administration is putting kids at risk. And you know what? We're showing the video of all these kids every single week. What about the kids that don't make it? What about the kids that die in the wilderness? What about the kids that are starving to death? What about the kids that are pumped on birth control, Ainsley, because they're raped along the journey? It is aiding and abetting, and it is helping the cartel. And our elected officials have to make it very clear. No more magnet. If you're a parent, there's no reunifying anymore. These parents are unfit.
They're not listening to you. They're not listening to you.
It's not right.
This is not right. This is a major problem. This is a crisis. Children, 5 years old. These two little sisters, I believe they were, I think they were 3 and 5, thrown over the wall. No one's there to get them except for these Border Patrol agents. And they don't have as much funding and they don't have as much manpower. And so we don't know how many of these kids that are dropped off at a wall or at the border that we never find. This 5-year-old screaming, if you have a 5-year-old, if you're a parent, you cannot ever imagine doing this to your child. Apparently, the parents live here in the United States. Moments later, the border agent did spot the child, heard the child screaming, and came and picked up this little boy. So hopefully he will safely be reunited with his parents.
Brian, we're going to reunite. We're going to bring the parents this child.
Yeah,
after
they win.
That's
win,
not right.
win.
That's not right.
And then they get to stay.
It's not safe, and America should be blamed if anything else happens to that child. They are unfit parents. If any American citizen would do the same thing, they would be behind bars, rightfully so.
Well, I just also remember clearly the one still photo of that little girl crying as their mom was being arrested under the Trump years. And they said that picture never stopped leaving all the other networks, network television, other cable networks, that picture of that child crying. We have that to the 10th power. We have actual video on a daily basis. People, children being dropped over walls, sitting in cramped spaces.
Children abused inside these facilities.
Right.
Greg Abbott's been talking about that.
And when you have Mayorkas come out and say that's not who we are, that goes against our values, going against our values, the Homeland Security Secretary of saying if you get here, you get to stay here is a go sign to every Central American country, including, by the way, countries as far as Romania, to come through our southern border.
Right.
Brian, Lawrence, how is this going to affect these children in the long term?
The mental
A 5-year-old, the mental health, that child is never going to forget that moment, being scared to death, left alone in the pitch black dark in a country he's probably never been to. He's from Mexico, and smugglers take him over and leave him. Where are his parents?
Exactly. And Brian, you talk about that the elected officials aren't listening. You know how they listen when the American public put pressure on them. And Jim Jordan is saying they don't think, the elected officials don't think that the American public noticed. Watch.
I mean, they created this mess. It's almost as if it's intentional because they undid the Trump policies. The president won't go to the border. The vice president won't go to the border. When Secretary Mayorkas went to the border, he wouldn't let the press in the facilities. So it's like they want to stick their head in the sand and hope the country doesn't notice. But we certainly do. And no one in Congress will have a hearing. We've asked Jerry Nadler to have a hearing. We're the committee with jurisdiction. He won't have a hearing. So, again, they think the country doesn't notice, but we do. It is wrong, and they're the ones responsible.
CNN.com, I know you don't read it, but I did. Vice President Harris and her staff have sought to make one thing clear. She does not manage the southern border, and her aides are beginning to panic because it appears that she does. And the thing is, the president asked her to. She could deny the assignment, but it doesn't mean you're not responsible for the lack of action.
Well, the reason there's that confusion is at first President Biden said that she was going to be in charge of the border. Then they walked that back a few days later, and they said no, she's just going to focus on why these are issues in these countries.
And how many countries has she visited so far?
None.
Let me see. 0. She might visit one in June, so we have something to look forward to.
Brian. Everything is about Zoom. This is how we're going to fix this problem, by Zoom.
Something else that a lot of people are talking about is summer grilling season, and we're worried about our meat because the largest plant had to be shut down. It is crippled by the cyber attack line.
Yeah, JBS is scrambling to restart production after the hack shut down servers for facilities in North America and Australia.
All right, so here's the latest hack. Griff Jenkins is live in Washington as the company says most plants could reopen today. Did they pay ransom? Griff, do we know?
We don't know yet, and that's a great question. Brian, Lawrence, Ainsley, good morning. But here we go again. Another Russian ransomware attack. And this one could lead to sticker shock at the supermarket or hit you just as you head back out to your favorite restaurant to get that cheeseburger. Now, JBS's shutdown yesterday impacted all 9 beef plants you see here located in 8 states, which accounts for about a quarter of all U.S. beef. Now, they employ 66,000 American workers across 84 U.S.-based locations, and it's prompting concern of a possible meat shortage. USDA reported production declines on Tuesday, showing beef down 22%, pork down 19.5%. JBS's CEO said in a statement, quote, "The vast majority of our beef, pork, poultry, and prepared foods plants will be operational Wednesday." Meanwhile, on board Air Force One, the deputy White House press secretary acknowledging the attack. Watch.
JBS notified the administration that the ransom demand came from a criminal organization likely based in Russia. The White House is engaging directly with the Russian government on this matter and delivering the message that responsible states do not harbor ransomware criminals.
Monitoring the situation closely, Agriculture Secretary Tom Vilsack, who tweeted USDA continues to work closely with the White House, Department of Homeland Security, JBS USA, and others to mitigate any potential supply or price issues. This comes on the heels of last month's Colonial Pipeline ransomware attack that led to panic buying and fuel shortages, gas price hikes, and that company, Brian, ultimately paid their Russian captors $4.4 million. Now, all this comes just weeks before President Biden is expected to meet face-to-face with Russian President Vladimir Putin. Unclear exactly how he'll handle that or how he'll hold Putin accountable for this latest attack. Brian, Lawrence, Ainsley?
Wow, thanks so much. So you look at this. You got Australia that's affected. You have the Canada that's affected. Obviously, Brazil's affected. And we have the states that are affected are Nebraska, Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, Colorado, Utah, Texas, and Arizona. And this is private industry. What good is government having a military if they can't protect private industry in America? We are so not feared. We're being mocked. They mocked us, took down our East Coast with our power and energy, which we don't want anymore because we have solar panels and I guess an electric car. Someone's making it. And number two, now they stop what we're reading. And guess what we know? We know it comes from Russia. And guess what Russia said? We can expect, according to their deputy foreign minister, they warned that Vladimir Putin's government will send unpleasant messages to the U.S. leading up to the June 16th summit. Why are we taking that? Do they have a meat industry? Did we invent the internet? Did Al Gore help us invent the internet? Can't we get their meat industry and take that to the ground? Can we start messing with their pipelines? Sadly, we're in a world where that's the only message that our enemies will understand. Brute force right back. Instead, we know it's not you. We know it's just hackers in your country, Vladimir Putin, who you already called a soulless killer leading up to this. Nice diplomacy there. So this, to me, is we are being mocked. Guess what? We're going to get hit again. And cybercrime seems to pay pretty well. $5 million for the energy. How much do you think they got for the meat industry?
Oh, yeah, they're going to continue to get more money. And it's very clear that Russia has taken the Cold War online.
This could unite us,
exactly.
Lawrence.
150 companies worldwide have been hacked, and we know Russia is behind it. And they're doing this right before this meeting that is supposed to happen in about 2 weeks in Geneva. What will be the response is what a lot of folks are saying. Eric Trump talks about this on Hannity last night, what the response should be. Take a look.
Putin is literally licking his chops right now, knowing that he's going to be meeting this guy. He's going to be sizing him up. He's looking at the weakness in this country in terms of fuel prices going sky high, lumber prices going sky high, food prices, everything. He's looking at inflation. He's looking at how effective they've been in terms of hacking pipelines and meat processing plants and every single everything else. You better believe that Putin is licking his lips, and a lot of other adversaries around the world are doing the same thing because they're seeing a weak leader, and it's very, very scary.
Well, when President Biden took office on day one, he signed that executive order. He closed down the pipeline. That gave us, our country, more dependence on Russia. So that helped Russia there. Then the cyber attacks, we're paying them to stop hacking into our system so that we can get our oil back, the Colonial Pipeline, paying them probably so we can get our meat industry back. If you're wondering if you have any of this meat in your freezer, the beef and pork sold under Swift brand. Costco sells the pork loins and the tenderloins, and the organic chicken is under the brand name Just Bear. Check your freezer.
Yep, everyone check your loins.
Check your loins.
Yep.
Check your deltoids.
Exactly. That's a little bit better.
Brian always says he got his vaccine. He's like, look at my deltoids.
Right. A lot of people commented. I'm just saying. Right. Absolutely. Got that little V going.
Speaking of COVID.
Right. All right, now we'll talk about this. Anthony Fauci is following in the footsteps of Andrew Cuomo and running a book. It's going to be 80 pages. It's coming out in November, the first week in November, about what he learned during this COVID-19 virus. So I believe, I'll make a prediction, it's going to be called Expect the Unexpected, 10 Lessons on Truth, Service, and the Way Forward. It's going to be published by National Geographic Books, and is tied to an upcoming documentary on Anthony Fauci. This is unbelievable. My sense is, after Governor Cuomo wrote this book, he's proven to be an absolute disgrace, and now he's fighting just to keep his term going, let alone running for re-election. I think Anthony Fauci's heading the same direction. If you think about the origins and the way he pushed back on that it came from Wuhan lab, and then when he came out and said this will not be a threat here in February, then he told us not to wear masks, and now you tell us to wear 2 masks and goggles, and then you tell us don't worry about it, the Wuhan lab is it. I think when you start examining this and move politics away from this and President Trump away from this, this book is going to go the same way as Governor Cuomo's book, and that is unpurchased.
But is the pandemic over, Brian? When did he write the book? Can we get back to normalcy now? Does that mean everything is over? Why are they writing the books in the middle of this? And then, by the way, they keep telling us a second surge is coming. Right? Did you include that in the book? Did you predict that? I mean, it's just unbelievable.
Vietnam variant.
Let me tell you some interesting information this morning. BuzzFeed, they used the Freedom of Information Act to obtain 3,200 pages of Fauci's emails. What they found is unbelievable. There's this key figure at the Wuhan lab that has gotten grants to investigate or do research on coronavirus. He's the president.
From the NIH, which with Fauci
That's right.
heads.
Fauci's right. He's the president of the Eco Health Alliance. So he sends an email to Fauci last April, after it was starting to spread in New York and in California here in the U.S. And he personally thanks him for downplaying the lab leak theory. This is what one of the emails said. I just wanted to say a personal thank you on behalf of our staff and collaborators for publicly standing up and stating that the scientific evidence supports a natural origin for COVID-19 from a bat to human spillover, not a lab release from the Wuhan Institute of Virology. From my perspective, your comments are brave, and coming from your trusted voice will help dispel the myths being spun around the virus's origins.
So anytime he denies that he denied that the lab leak was real, someone should tell Peter Danzig, who got millions of dollars from the NIH, which he was in control of the checkbook. Peter Danzig, yeah. And you could see him feature the 60 Minutes feature that talks about this guy. He's one of the few still pushing back to defend the Wuhan lab and said it had nothing to do with it. But here's something else. He said, thanks for the kind note.
Yeah, Fauci wrote him back and said, thanks for the kind note.
I thought this was also important. Science magazine quoted a top Chinese health official saying that the United States and other Western nations were making a big mistake by not telling people to mask up. Now, in the email, this scientist quickly scrambles to apologize to Anthony Fauci ahead of the article to say, I saw the Science interview. How could I say such a word, big mistake, about others? That was a journalist wording. Hope you understand. What are we missing in this big story? Right. The big story is, if masks work, you should have been telling us they work. They weren't. And the Chinese, who you're buddies with, were telling you to tell us to mask up, and then they were apologizing for telling us to mask up.
Brian,
do you understand this?
It was never about if the masks worked. They wanted to hoard the supply and not let Americans know. This was a strategy section.
Could be.
Another thing,
then tell us.
Exactly. Tell us the truth. And this is why the American people don't trust government, by the way. Number two, one of the stories that's being missed here is we never had a shot to defeat China in this because they were defeating us from the inside. We're getting thank you notes back and forth between our leader of this virus, to combat this virus, and China, people that are part of the organization say, thank you for the conversation. We need you as a trusted voice. Meanwhile, we know that some of his funding contributed to this. So we never had a shot. We never had a shot. When they can defeat us from the inside, we were doomed to begin with.
Imagine how frustrated President Trump was.
Imagine how frustrated people like Janice Dean are when those emails are being exchanged while her in-laws are dying. I think they passed away last April. Let's hand it over to Jillian, who has some headlines for us. Jillian?
Good morning, and let's begin with this. The body of a missing 6-year-old boy is found in a Texas motel room. Samuel Olson was reported missing last week. Police say his body was found inside a tote bag in a motel room and appeared to have been there for quite some time. Teresa Balboa, the girlfriend of Olson's father, is being questioned by police. Balboa said she last saw the boy last week during a handoff with his mother, but police have not been able to confirm that. A worker shortage is plaguing businesses, and the U.S. Chamber of Commerce warns it's only getting worse. A new report by the Chamber of Commerce says the U.S. had a record 8.1 million vacant jobs in March, with 1.4 available workers per job, which is half of the national average of 2.8 workers per job. The Chamber of Commerce says South Dakota, Nebraska, and Vermont are struggling the most to fill open positions. Happening now, 2 Russian cosmonauts are in the middle of a 6.5-hour spacewalk. They are decommissioning an old module on the International Space Station. This spacewalk is the second in what will be a series of excursions. NASA says this is the 6th spacewalk of 2021 and the first for these 2 cosmonauts. And take a look at this incredible video showing a teen fighting off a bear to defend her dogs. The bear was standing on a wall in the backyard of the teen's California home. When it appeared to try to grab one of her pets, that's when the teen jumped into action and pushed the bear. She says when the bear fell, she and her dogs ran away as fast as they could. Amazingly, she suffered only a sprained finger and a scraped knee. She's my hero.
You know what's so underappreciated there?
What?
The little dog, after the bear got pushed back, the little dog just jumped back and just gave him one more time. And you better not come back again.
That's great. What would you do?
Right.
You got dogs.
Absolutely, yeah.
You're fighting the bear.
The one thing I was smart enough, my dogs are as big as bears.
It's true.
So it would have probably been an equal fight, and I got 2 of them.
My dog is not. The bear could go like that to my dog and send him flying, but I would do anything I could.
Yeah, bear, alligator, whatever it took. I'm willing to fight anything.
I mean, if I was
They are, and they're named Rocky and Apollo.
Right.
They can take
if I can't get him to fight.
Thank you, Julian.
So what would you do?
Oh, I'm not doing anything.
The bear eats the dog?
What? I'm not fighting the bear. I mean, if I'm in Texas, I'm armed. Guys, if I'm armed in Texas, then I'm ready to fight with the gun. But I'm not fighting the bear with my hands. Y'all crazy?
Wow. Bad news for Lawrence's dog.
Superhero until they're dead.
Okay, well, that lady had a wall to protect her between the bear. If that bear is coming right at you.
Walls don't work. More proof. Still ahead.
Crazy.
Bad news for Lawrence's pets. All right, you're on your own. All right, meanwhile.
Ainsley, Brian, and Lawrence, good morning. Authorities say the two kids had run away from their foster center and broke into a house in Enterprise, Florida. The homeowner was not there at the time, but the guns were. Kids grabbed those guns and started a shootout. Sheriffs say the 14-year-old had a lengthy criminal history and ripped the state's juvenile system for failing the community. Listen.
What the is the Department of Juvenile Justice doing, sending these kids to places that can't handle them?
The 14-year-old was shot multiple times and is in critical condition. She had previously been detained by authorities, accused of stealing and then allegedly setting fire to a detention facility. The 12-year-old was not injured, neither were deputies. Sheriffs say this is the reality for law enforcement as anti-police sentiment grips the country.
They want to defund us. They want to sanction us and take qualified immunity away. They want to make us the bad guy. Where have we gone wrong that 12-year-old and 14-year-old think it's okay to take on law enforcement?
Police Officers Association saying we've seen a rise in violent attacks by homeless individuals, including attacks on police officers. The union wrote as well, we are deeply grateful to the citizens who rushed to our officers' aid. Our staffing shortage left this officer working alone instead of with a partner. That officer, fortunately, is okay. Back to you.
Yeah, people got to get involved if you see that. Absolutely. Thanks, Doc.
I know. I was so glad that guy jumped in and helped the lady, the female officer.
The second time we've seen that in the last couple of weeks.
All right, coming up. Lawrence, what's coming up?
Coming up, reversing course. The Biden administration attempts to further undo Trump policies, prompting fear across Alaska. Our next guest is warning of this disastrous consequences for workers. Plus, the New York Times slams young reporters.
Good morning and welcome back. Time for your headlines now. And we begin with honoring a true hero. A California Sheriff's Department comes together for a procession for fallen Sergeant Dominic Vodka. Sergeant Vaca was shot during a high-speed chase in San Bernardino County Monday. He was airlifted to the hospital where he later died from his injuries. The 43-year-old was a 17-year veteran of the department. The family home of South Carolina Congresswoman Nancy Mace was vandalized with graffiti early Monday morning. The vandals tagged Mace's Charleston property with Antifa logos and left-wing political messaging.
It's been a jarring day. This was invasive. This was my home, and it was, quite frankly, scary.
Mace, a single mother of two, says she feels bad for her kids and neighbors. Police are investigating. Tickets to an upcoming concert in Florida will cost you $18 unless you're not vaccinated. Then they'll cost you close to $1,000. The headlining band Teenage Bottle Rocket fully supports the idea. Two fans joined me earlier on Fox and Friends First. Take a listen.
What the band is doing and the promoter, we feel, is, discriminating against us who aren't ready to go through with the vaccination yet, and it kind of hurts.
The Daily Mail reports that only 4 tickets are being offered to unvaccinated concertgoers, and according to the Daily Mail, so far none have been purchased. Let's look at your headlines. Brian, send it back to you.
All right, here we go. Let's talk energy. 27 minutes now before the top of the hour. President Biden's climate policies are now putting Alaska workers on ice as the White House suspends oil and gas leases in Arctic National Wildlife Refuge, pending a review to assess environmental impacts. You know what direction that's going. The decision marks a reversal of the Trump administration's effort to expand drilling in the region, a pass with the tax plan in 2017. Alaska Senate candidate Kelly Teshbaka joins us now. She predicts the consequences of this action will be disastrous. She joins us now. So, Kelly, this passed with President Trump's tax revamping. What was the delay that allowed President Biden's administration to stop it?
President Trump's administration took 2 years looking into this and saying we were ready to go in January. We've waited 6 decades for ANWR to be opened, and over 80% of Alaskans support drilling, and less than 1% of ANWR. That's what we're talking about here. But this doesn't just stop drilling, it stops even exploration and discovery of any oil and gas. It stops all activity in anything having to do with ANWR. So this is devastating for workers, for our economy, for cleaner and greener energy, because nobody does it better than here in Alaska. It's not like our demand for fossil fuels is going down. So we're just going to other countries who do it worse, and then also for our national security.
Yeah, let's write checks to Russia and Saudi Arabia. That makes sense, instead of to Alaska. You say this is 6 decades of fighting. You say that Senator Murkowski, a Republican, played a role in the stoppage of this. How would a senator from Alaska be against this?
So Lisa Murkowski has been complicit in enabling Joe Biden's radical environmental extremism agenda. She was opposed to Donald Trump in 2016, opposed to him in 2020, was an obstacle to him through his entire administration, never mind the fact that he was one of the best presidents we've ever had for Alaska and our energy policy. It was under him, not Ronald Reagan, that we got ANWR open finally for development. But on top of that, she's helping Joe Biden. She was the deciding vote that let Deb Haaland through the Energy Committee, and it's under Secretary Haaland and the Department of Interior that's leading this suspension of our leases that have been lawfully executed. That vote cost us billions here in Alaska.
Yeah, first they pause it, then they cancel it. It's very consistent. They want to get rid, pretend we don't need fossil fuels anymore. Unbelievable. You said this is just part of a bigger policy to treat Alaska like a national park instead of a state, and not listening to the Alaskan people. So that's part of the reason why you're running as a former Alaska Commissioner of Administration. You are now trying to be the Republican Senate candidate. Kelly Tishbaka, thanks so much.
Thanks, Brian. We could use America's help at kellyforak.com, and we're hoping to turn our Senate seat around so we can fight against this energy policy for all of America. I appreciate your help. Thank you.
All right, go get him. Thanks, Kelly. Meanwhile, straight ahead, Texas Democrats sent the media into a frenzy after they walked out of the state House to block the GOP's voting reform bill. But the chief architect of the bill says the pushback may actually help Republicans.
Steps and facing backlash over his decision to write a tell-all book on the COVID-19 pandemic.
Carly Shimkus, Fox News Headlines 24/7, Sirius XM 115, here with the latest. Carly.
Hey, that's right. Good morning, guys. So the book is called Expect the Unexpected, 10 Lessons on Truth, Service, and the Way Forward. It will be released in November. Now, a promotional summary for the book says, with more than 3 decades spent combating some of the most dangerous diseases to strike humankind, AIDS, Ebola, COVID-19, Dr. Fauci has worked in daunting professional conditions and shouldered great responsibility. The earnest reflections in these pages offer a universal message on how to lead in times of crisis and find resilience in the face of disappointment and obstacles. Now, like you said, many are comparing Fauci's book to Governor Cuomo's. The comparisons are not kind. One Twitter user says, I really need the people in charge of handling this pandemic to stop writing books about how they're handling this pandemic while they're still doing it. Now, a spokesperson for the National Institute of Allergies and Infectious Diseases told Fox News Fauci will not make any royalties from the book. That's something that you make when the book's already published. So still some questions over if he made anything when he signed the book deal, things like that.
Interesting. Okay, so I'm going to use this next story as a personal warning. If anyone or anything tries to hurt my puppy, this is what's happening.
Yeah, the Bears are on high alert in the New Jersey, New York, Connecticut area, Jillian. This is wild video going viral on social media. It shows a California teenager literally pushing a bear over a fence to protect her dogs. So she says that she didn't know it was a bear at the time. She heard her dogs barking, just saw a big animal, sprang to action. Then after the fact was like, oh my gosh, I think that was a bear. She sprained her finger, scraped her knee. That's about it. But some animal experts have weighed in. They say, yeah, maybe you should not put your hands on a bear. They're advising against it. One guy did say, maybe use a slingshot if this ever happens.
If you just have one in your pocket.
Yeah, I don't know how many people have slingshots still here, but that's an idea.
Got a slingshot?
Can we get her on the show, please? She's my hero. Thanks, Carly.
She's all of our heroes this morning. I'll see you guys later.
Also a hero, Brian Kilmeade.
He also has a slingshot.
Right. Absolutely. One of those two things is true. A little bit later, we'll reveal in our quiz of the day. I'm not sure if we are doing a chance to bet on what is true or not. I think that comes tomorrow. Hey, guys, let me tell you what we have planned for the next 3 hours, and hopefully you'll watch. We got a nationwide truck driver shortage. It's the reason why things are so expensive. It's raising costs at the pump, too. and the grocery store. With gas and meat, usually one goes with the other, the prices are on the rise. What can we do about it?
The primary mission of the Coalition to Salute America's Heroes is to offer financial emergency assistance to veterans and their families.
Visit saluteheroes.org to learn more.
Welcome back. A homeless man charged with a brazen attack on an Asian woman in New York City. 48-year-old Alexander Wright is facing several charges, including assault as a hate crime. Wright has 40 previous arrests, including 5 within the last year. NYPD Commissioner Dermot Shea blasting New York City's bail laws for repeatedly letting Wright back out, saying, quote, "What are we doing in society when we are releasing these people right back onto the streets? It's putting New Yorkers at risk."
Meanwhile, in San Francisco, a homeless man arrested after attacking an Asian police officer. You can see brave bystanders trying to pull off the suspect as he has the officer in a death grip. One bystander told us this could have been avoided if the city provided proper treatment for those in need. Listen.
The problems that they have, the underlying mental illness that they have is not dealt with, and they're let back out on the street even quicker than someone who maybe isn't mentally ill.
The officer was treated for minor injuries. Anti-Asian attacks up 169% this year, with 86 reported so far compared to 32 this time last year.
Wow. The family home of South Carolina Congresswoman Nancy Mace was vandalized with graffiti early Monday morning. The vandals tagged Mace's Charleston property with Antifa logos and left-wing political messaging.
It's been a jarring day. This was invasive. This was my home, and it was, quite frankly, scary.
Mace, a single mother of 2, says she felt bad for her kids and neighbors. Democratic Mayor of Charleston, John Tecklenburg, condemned the criminals, saying the cowardly acts will not be tolerated. Police are investigating.
And a father accusing his daughter's school district of trying to ban him from their graduation for criticizing critical race theory. Sean McBrearty will be allowed to attend the ceremony under conditions of a criminal trespass order issued after he repeatedly disrupted board meetings and put out signs and flyers without permission.
I had no plans of creating a scene. I just wanted to be a dad and tell my school that, look, we need education, not indoctrination. And I've had, a number of business leaders and people across the towns really pull me aside and say, hey, Sean, I believe in what you're doing. I just can't say anything.
In St. Paul, Minnesota, revealing why he quit the organization in a newly published video.
Rashad Turner saying he learned the, quote, ugly truth about BLM and that the leadership shows a little concern for promoting the welfare of black lives, and he joins us now. Rashad, thank you so much for being here. Look, I think we can all agree the lives of black people matter. If you don't agree with that statement, you're a racist. But the organization, BLM, what is the ugly truth that you discovered?
Well, I think you hit it on the head right there, right? When you call for a moratorium on charter schools, that is a direct attack on black families, on black children. The question I always ask folks, how can black lives matter if black minds don't matter?
So the organization raised $90 million in 2020, and I'm curious where that money is going, and if that money is going to help black families, to help black children.
Well, I'll tell you this, we here in Minnesota, we've got worst in nation education gaps. And, based on the data where we have tons of schools where 4 out of 5 kids cannot read, I would say that money's not coming to Minnesota, right? If we had 90 million, heck, children would be up here reading, our schools would be better. But let me add something here. When you think about that 90 million, where it comes from, BLM has been co-opted. They've been co-opted by...
For decades, blacks have been prevented from getting the same quality education as whites. It's a fact. It's reality. Why does the education system, though, seem to be allowed to suppress blacks like it does?
Well, it's the teachers' unions. I can't say it enough. Here in Minnesota, Education Minnesota is 94% white, yet they walk around acting like they're so woke that they understand what's best for black children, right? But they own our education system. They spend about $30 to $50 million a year here in Minnesota to control what our politicians are doing. I don't know if folks have been paying attention to what our, I don't even know what to call him these days, but Governor Tim Walz here in Minnesota hasn't done one thing, and that's because teachers' unions control him. We have to start listening to parents. I mean, there's no way on earth after these 2 past school years that folks can think that things like education savings accounts aren't going to be good for families. I'll tell you, there's not one black family in my neighborhood here in St. Paul that has said, hey, we don't want that money to follow our child. anyone who's in opposition to school choice, charter schools, you're right. I'd say they're a racist, right? Because we know that charter schools are creating opportunities. We know that that money that is supposed to be educating our children, that's not happening here in Minnesota. We spend the most money, you know, top states in this country on what we spend on education. However, our outcomes don't show that. We're spending millions upon millions of dollars to try and educate children.
Rashad Turner, thank you very much for joining us. We appreciate your time. Our show is now over. Fox and Friends starts right now.